The crystal towers of Zephyria Prime gleamed like diamonds under the purple sun. In the Grand Academy, young minds gathered to learn about the galaxy's past. The hall was filled with beings who looked like living starlight, their skin glowing with soft silver light. These were the Ethereals, a peaceful people who had known only harmony for thousands of years. Kiraeth stood at the center of the learning circle, her voice flowing like music as she spoke to her fellow students. Her silver hair moved like liquid mercury, and her large blue eyes sparkled with excitement. She was the Academy's brightest student, always eager to share knowledge about the ancient civilizations that once roamed the stars. Long ago, our galaxy was filled with violent species, she explained, her hands creating glowing images in the air. They fought wars that destroyed entire star systems. They knew only conflict and chaos. But thankfully, all of these dangerous races have been extinct for over 2,000 years. Today we live in perfect peace because a piercing alarm cut through her words like a knife. The soft musical tones that normally filled the Academy were replaced by harsh warning sounds that made every ethereal freeze in terror. Red lights flashed across the crystal walls and urgent messages appeared in their ancient script. Unknown vessel detected. Unknown vessel detected! All citizens remained calm. Kiraeth's mouth hung open, her sentence left unfinished. Around her, students whispered in fear. None of them had ever heard these alarms before. For generations, nothing unknown had ever visited their world. Their space was protected by ancient agreements with neighboring civilizations. No one came to Zephyria Prime without permission. The Academy's masters rushed in, their usually calm faces showing worry. Master Veltar, the eldest among them, raised his hands for silence. His mental voice touched every mind in the room at once, as was their way. Students, return to your homes immediately. Something approaches our world that we do not understand. But Kiraeth could not move. Her mind raced with questions. What could be coming that their sensors did not recognize? All known species in the galaxy were registered in their vast databases. Every ship design, every energy signature, every method of faster-than-light travel was recorded and studied. In the sky above, space itself seemed to tear open. A wound of bright light appeared among the stars, and from it emerged something that should not exist. The ship was unlike anything in their records. Where ethereal vessels were smooth and beautiful, flowing like liquid art, this newcomer was harsh and angular. Its hull was dark metal, scarred by battle and patched with repairs. Strange symbols were painted on its sides in colors that hurt to look at. The vessel limped through space, leaving a trail of glowing gas behind it. Pieces of debris fell from its damaged hull. It was clearly dying, struggling to stay together as it approached their world. The ship's design spoke of war and violence, of a people who expected to fight for their lives. On the planet's surface, the Ethereal Council gathered in emergency session. These wise beings, who had guided their people for centuries, stood in their circle of floating crystal chairs. Their combined thoughts moved like gentle waves seeking understanding. The vessel carries life signs, reported Counselor Xylona, her mind touching the orbital sensors. The beings inside are unlike us. Their thoughts, they burn like fire. I can feel their pain and fear even from here. Should we help them? Asked another counselor. They may be refugees fleeing some disaster. Or they may be invaders, warned Counselor Merdan, the most cautious among them. Look at their ship. It is a weapon as much as a transport. These beings know war. As they debated, the unknown ship sent out a signal. The message was crude and simple, broadcast on old radio frequencies that no civilized species had used for millennia. A female voice spoke in a language their computers slowly began to translate. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Defiance. We are badly damaged and request emergency assistance. We carry 200 refugees seeking sanctuary. Please respond. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. These strangers called themselves humans, and they came from a place called Earth. But when the Ethereals searched their vast libraries, they found no record of either. It was as if these beings had appeared from nowhere. Captain Chen's voice came again, weaker this time. Our life support is failing. We have children aboard. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. The word children made Kiraeth's heart ache. Even if these humans were strange and frightening, their young ones were innocent. She found herself walking toward the council chamber. Those students were forbidden from entering during emergency sessions. We cannot let them die, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Whatever they are, they ask for mercy. The counselors turned to look at her. In their society, the young rarely spoke without permission, especially during such serious matters. But something in Kira-Eth's voice made them listen. "You heard their thoughts, child," said Counselor Zilona gently. "They burn like fire. Their minds are filled with violence and chaos. Can we risk exposing our people to such dangerous influences?" "But they also have children," Kira-Eth replied. "If we let them die, what does that make us?" The debate continued as the human ship drew closer. Its systems were failing one by one. Soon it would crash into their world or break apart in space. The ethereals had the power to save them, but they had never faced such a choice before. Finally, the eldest counselor spoke. "We will guide them to Landing Bay 7, far from our cities. We will help them, but we must be careful. These humans may change our world in ways we cannot imagine." He was right, though none of them could guess how much their world was about to change. The decision to help would set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of ethereal society. As the battered human ship limped toward their world, Kira-Eth watched from the Academy's highest tower. Her unfinished sentence echoed in her mind. She had been about to say that violent species were extinct, that peace had won forever. But now she wondered if peace was something that could be lost as easily as it was gained. The ship touched down with a crash that shook the ground for miles around. Smoke rose from its engines and its hull groaned like a wounded animal. Inside were beings who had never known the gentle touch of collective thought, who lived their lives as individuals in a way that ethereals could barely understand. Kira-Eth pressed her hand against the crystal window and made a choice that would change everything. Tomorrow she would volunteer to be among the first to meet these humans face to face. She had to know what kind of beings could build such a harsh ship, could survive in the cold emptiness between stars, and could still find the strength to ask for help when all seemed lost. The purple sun set behind the crystal towers, and Zephyria Prime prepared for its first contact with humanity. None of them were ready for what was coming. The morning air was thick with tension as Kira-Eth joined the first contact team. She had barely slept, her mind racing with questions about the mysterious humans. The other ethereals looked nervous, their usual calm disturbed by what they had sensed from the crashed ship during the night. "Their dreams," whispered Dr. Silana, the team's mind healer. "Even in sleep, their thoughts are storms. I have never felt anything like it." The landing bay stretched before them like a crystal valley. In its center sat the human ship, still smoking from its rough landing. Up close it looked even more brutal than before. The metal was scarred by what could only be weapon fire. Strange symbols and numbers were painted on its hull, along with images of creatures that looked fierce and predatory. Captain Sarah Chen emerged from an airlock that hissed and sparked. She was smaller than the ethereals had expected, but there was something in the way she moved that spoke of contained power. Her skin was darker than their silver glow, and her eyes were a warm brown that seemed to see everything at once. Behind her came other humans, and the ethereals gasped in shock. Each one was different. Their skin came in various shades, their hair in different colors and textures. Some were tall, others short. Some moved with the grace of warriors, others with the careful steps of scholars. It was chaos compared to the gentle similarity of ethereal society. "Thank you for saving us," Captain Chen said through the translation device they had hastily prepared. Her voice was rough, worn by years of command. "I'm Sarah Chen, captain of the Defiance. We owe you our lives." The formal words were simple enough, but underneath them, the ethereals felt something that made them step back in alarm. This human's mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Gratitude mixed with suspicion. Relief battled with worry. Love for her people fought against fear for their future. It was overwhelming. Kira-Eth found herself fascinated rather than frightened. Where her people shared gentle, flowing thoughts, this human burned with individual fire. Every emotion was sharp and clear, separate from the others around her. "You are welcome here," said Counselor Zelona, though her voice shook slightly. "We wish to understand your people and your needs." As the humans disembarked, the cultural shock grew worse. Children ran between the adults, laughing and shouting in ways that made the ethereals wince. Their emotions were even wilder than the adults, shifting from joy to sadness to excitement in moments. How could anyone live with such chaos in their minds? Dr. Silana approached with her medical scanners, hoping to understand these strange beings better. What she found amazed and horrified her in equal measure. The humans healed incredibly fast. Wounds that would take an ethereal weeks to recover from closed-in days for humans. Their bones were dense and strong, their muscles designed for power rather than grace. They are predators, she whispered to Kireth. Their entire bodies are built for survival in a hostile world. Look at their eyes, they face forward like hunters. Their teeth are designed to tear meat. Even their hands are weapons. But Kireth saw something else. Yes, the humans were built for conflict, but they used that strength to protect each other. She watched a human father lift his injured child with arms that could probably crush an ethereal, yet his touch was gentle as silk. A group of human mothers had formed a circle around the youngest children, their eyes scanning for danger even in this safe place. They are not just predators, Kireth said softly. They are protectors too. Captain Chen approached them, and Kireth felt the full force of human determination. This woman had led her people across impossible distances to find safety. She had made decisions that no ethereal could imagine making, choosing to act without the approval of a collective consciousness. We need supplies to repair our ship, Chen explained. We don't want to be a burden. Give us what we need and we'll leave your people in peace. Where will you go? Asked Counselor Zilona. Chen's smile was sad but fierce. Somewhere we can be free. Somewhere we can choose our own path without others deciding for us. The concept was alien to the ethereals. Choice individual paths? Their society had always moved together, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. The idea of deliberately choosing different directions seemed not just strange but wrong. As the days passed, the humans worked on their ship with an efficiency that amazed their hosts. They did not need to discuss every decision through mental consensus. Instead, they formed small teams that worked independently, trusting each other to do their jobs without constant oversight. Kireth volunteered to help translate and soon found herself spending hours with the humans. She learned about their journey from something called the solar system, where their species had been born on a blue and green world called Earth. Why did you leave? She asked Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's scientist. He was an older human with kind eyes and patient hands. Because Earth's government wanted to control everything, he explained. They said it was for our own good, for unity and peace. But it meant we could never explore, never try new things, never fail and learn from our mistakes. But failure brings pain, Kireth said, confused. Why would you want that? Dr. Webb smiled, and his emotions rippled with something the ethereals had no word for. Later, Kireth would learn to call it hope. Because without the right to fail, we can never truly succeed. Without the freedom to choose wrong paths, the right paths mean nothing. These ideas spread through Kireth's mind like ripples in a pond. For the first time in her life, she began to wonder about choices she had never been allowed to make. What would she study if she could pick anything? Where would she live if she could go anywhere? Who would she become if she was free to decide for herself? The humans shared stories of their homeworld during the evening meals. They spoke of vast oceans and towering mountains, of cities that reached toward the sky and forests that stretched beyond the horizon. But they also spoke of wars and suffering, of mistakes that had cost millions of lives. How do you live with such pain? Asked one young ethereal. Captain Chen's answer surprised them all. The pain reminds us why peace is worth fighting for. The mistakes teach us how to do better next time. If we never hurt, how would we know the value of healing? That night, Kireth lay awake thinking about the human captain's words. In ethereal society, pain was something to be avoided at all costs. Their collective consciousness smoothed away individual suffering, making everyone share the burden until it became barely noticeable. But these humans carried their pain like badges of honor, proof that they had lived and learned and grown stronger. As she drifted toward sleep, Kireth felt something new stirring in her mind. For the first time in her life, she began to think thoughts that were truly her own, separate from the gentle flow of the collective. It frightened her, but it also filled her with a strange excitement. The humans had been on their world for only a few days, but already everything was changing. The young ethereals who worked with them began to ask questions that had never been asked before. The older ones worried about the chaos these strangers brought with their individual minds and burning emotions. None of them realized that this was only the beginning. The real test would come when they learned the truth about why the humans had really left Earth, and what was following them across the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the human ship landed on Zephyria Prime. The repairs were going well, but something had changed in the ethereal workers who helped them. They moved differently now, with more purpose and less collective harmony. Kireth noticed it first in herself, thoughts that felt strange and new, ideas that belonged to her alone. She was helping Dr. Webb repair a damaged computer core when she finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Dr. Webb, you said you left Earth because the government wanted control. But Earth wasn't destroyed, was it?" The human's hands stopped moving. He looked at her with those warm brown eyes, and she felt his emotions shift to something heavy and sad. "No, Kira Eth. Earth is fine. Better than fine, actually. It's a paradise now. Then why did you leave paradise?" Dr. Webb set down his tools and sat on a piece of broken metal. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "Because paradise isn't worth much if you're not free to choose it for yourself." Slowly, carefully, he told her the truth. Earth had not been destroyed by war or disaster. Instead, it had been perfected. The Earth Federation had eliminated poverty, disease, and conflict. Every human need was met before it was even felt. Crime was impossible because the government knew what everyone would do before they did it. "It sounds wonderful," Kira Eth said, but her voice was uncertain. "It was," Dr. Webb agreed. "Everyone was safe, healthy, and happy. But they were also controlled. The government decided where you lived, what job you had, who you married, how many children you could have. They said it was for the greater good, for perfect harmony." Kira Eth felt something cold crawl up her spine. It sounded exactly like ethereal society, but somehow wrong. What happened to those who disagreed? "There was no disagreement allowed," Dr. Webb said simply. "Those who tried to think differently were corrected, made to fit the pattern. We were the last free colony, the last place where humans could still choose their own paths. When the Federation came for us, we ran. You chose exile over paradise. We chose freedom over paradise. Sometimes that's the hardest choice of all." The revelation hit Kira Eth like a physical blow. These humans hadn't fled disaster, they had fled perfection. They had given up safety and comfort to keep something that ethereal society had never valued: the right to be wrong, the freedom to fail, the choice to be different. That evening, she shared what she had learned with other young ethereals. The news spread through their community like wildfire, but instead of the usual shared understanding, it created arguments. For the first time in generations, ethereals found themselves on different sides of an issue. "They're criminals," insisted Turnax, a student who had always followed every rule. "They ran from lawful authority. They chose chaos over order." "They chose freedom," Kira Eth shot back, surprising herself with the anger in her voice. "Just like we should be able to choose." "Choose what?" Turnax demanded. "We have everything we need. Peace, harmony, purpose. What more could anyone want?" "The right to decide for ourselves what we want," Kira Eth said, and the words felt like fire in her mouth. The argument spread beyond the young ethereals. Soon the entire colony was buzzing with debate. The collective consciousness, which had flowed like a calm river for thousands of years, began to develop currents and eddies. Individual voices started to emerge from the gentle harmony. Master Veltar called Kira Eth to his study, his ancient face creased with worry. "Child, what is happening to our people? The collective is fragmenting. Students question their teachers, workers ignore their assigned tasks. Even the council cannot reach consensus on simple matters." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," Kira Eth said, and immediately regretted her boldness. But the old master didn't scold her. Instead, he looked out the crystal window at the human ship. "Tell me, young one, do you still want to be part of our collective? Or have these humans infected you with their individualism?" Kira Eth thought carefully before answering. "I want both, Master. I want to belong to something greater than myself, but I also want the right to choose how I belong. The humans work together better than we do in some ways because each person chooses to contribute their unique strengths. And if they choose not to contribute, then they face the consequences of their choice. But it's still their choice to make." The master was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "You sound like them now, like the humans. Is that what you want?" "I want to sound like myself," Kira Eth replied. "For the first time in my life, I want my thoughts to be my own." Meanwhile, Captain Chen was facing her own problems. The ship's long-range sensors had detected something approaching from the direction of Earth. The Federation had found them. She called her senior officers together in the ship's damaged command center. The space was cramped and harsh compared to ethereal architecture, but it was functional in a way that their hosts' buildings were not. 3 ships, Federation Navy, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres. "They'll be here in 4 days. Admiral Reeves," Chen said with a bitter smile. I should have known he'd come personally. Captain, the ethereals don't deserve to get caught up in our fight, said Dr. Webb. Maybe we should leave now. Lead the Federation away from here. Chen shook her head. Our engines need another week of work. We wouldn't make it past the system's edge. Then we fight, said Chief Petty Officer Johnson, his scarred hands clenching into fists. With what? Chen asked. We have no weapons left, no shields, no armor. We're refugees, not warriors anymore. But even as she spoke, she felt that familiar fire building in her chest. The Federation thought they could hunt down free humans like animals. They thought they could force everyone to accept their version of paradise. Well, she had news for them. When Kira Eth learned about the approaching Federation ships, she felt something she had never experienced before, righteous anger. These humans had asked for nothing but sanctuary, and now their enemies were coming to drag them back to a life of comfortable slavery. She found herself walking toward the council chambers, her feet moving without conscious thought. Other young ethereals joined her, then older ones who had been working with the humans. By the time she reached the great crystal hall, she was leading a crowd. Counselors, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. The Federation comes to take our guests. What will we do? We will remain neutral, said Counselor Murdan firmly. This is not our conflict. Neutrality is a choice too, Kira Eth replied. And sometimes the choice to do nothing is the same as choosing the wrong side. The crowd behind her murmured agreement. And for the first time in ethereal history, citizens stood in opposition to their council's decision. The collective consciousness cracked a little more, and through that crack, the light of individual thought began to shine. Captain Chen stood at the entrance to the chamber, having come to tell the ethereals they were leaving. She had expected to find the usual calm debate, voices flowing together in gentle harmony. Instead, she found something that made her heart soar with hope. She found the birth of freedom on an alien world, sparked by humanity's greatest gift, the courage to choose your own path, even when that path led into darkness. The Federation was coming, but they weren't just coming for the humans anymore. They were coming for everyone who dared to think that freedom might be worth fighting for. The Federation fleet dropped out of hyperspace like three dark omens against the starfield. Their ships were sleek and powerful, built for imposing the government's will across the galaxy. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a city, enough soldiers to occupy a world. Admiral Marcus Reeves stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Harmony, his cold eyes fixed on the blue-green world below. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face carved from stone. For 30 years he had served the Federation faithfully, bringing order to chaos wherever he found it. Sir, we're detecting the Defiance on the planet's surface, reported his tactical officer. The ship appears to be undergoing repairs. And the aliens? Reeves asked. The ethereals, sir. They seem to be helping the terrorists, Reeves frowned. The reports he had read described the ethereals as peaceful, collective beings who avoided conflict. They should have turned the human refugees over immediately when contacted. The fact that they hadn't suggested contamination. Open a channel to the planet, he ordered. His image appeared on screens across Zephyria Prime, transmitted to every crystal tower and floating platform. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute authority of Earth's government. This is Admiral Reeves of the Earth Federation Navy. We have come for the criminals aboard the vessel Defiance. They are charged with sedition, rebellion, and terrorism against the lawful government of humanity. Turn them over immediately and no harm will come to your world. In the council chambers, the ethereals watched in stunned silence. This human seemed different from the refugees, colder, harder, with emotions locked away behind walls of duty and conviction. What will you do to them? Asked Counselor Zelona, though she already feared the answer. They will be returned to Earth for correction, Reeves replied smoothly. Their antisocial thoughts will be adjusted, their selfish desires replaced with proper collective spirit. They will become productive citizens of our perfect society. Kira Eth felt sick. She had learned enough about humans to understand what correction meant. The Federation would tear away everything that made Captain Chen and her people who they were, turning them into empty shells that wore human faces but had no human souls. And if we refuse? She asked, stepping forward before any of the counselors could stop her. Reeves studied her with those cold eyes. You are very young to speak for your people, alien. Do you understand what you're asking? The Federation Navy protects the peace of this entire sector. We cannot allow rebels and terrorists to corrupt innocent civilizations. We're not innocent anymore, Kireth said, and her voice carried across the planet through the communication system. We've learned that there's something more important than peace. Something more valuable than safety. And what is that? Freedom. The word hit the Federation admiral like a physical blow. He had heard it before from the rebels he had hunted across space. It was a disease, a madness that infected rational minds and turned them against proper order. You don't understand what you're saying, he told her. Freedom is chaos. Freedom is war and suffering and death. We offer you peace, prosperity, perfection. Why would any rational being choose struggle over happiness? Because happiness that isn't chosen isn't really happiness, Kireth replied. It's just a comfortable prison. On the Defiance, Captain Chen gathered her people for what might be their final stand. The ship's weapons were gone, stripped out to make room for more refugees. Their shields were still offline, and their engines couldn't power up for another 3 days. I won't ask anyone to fight who doesn't want to, she told them. The Federation isn't after you personally. They want me and the other colonial leaders. If you surrender, they might let you live. Chief Johnson snorted. Live as what, Captain? As empty puppets dancing to their strings? I'd rather die as myself than live as what they'd make me. Around the cargo bay, 200 men, women, and children nodded agreement. These people had given up everything for freedom. They weren't about to give up freedom for life. Then we fight, Chen said simply. Not because we can win, but because some things are worth dying for. As the hours passed, something amazing began to happen on Zephyria Prime. The collective consciousness that had guided ethereal society for millennia started to crack apart. Individual voices rose from the harmony, each one making its own choice about what to do. Some ethereals, led by Counselor Merdan, wanted to turn over the humans to avoid conflict. They valued peace above all else and couldn't understand why anyone would choose war over safety. Others, inspired by Kireth and her growing band of followers, declared that they would stand with the humans no matter the cost. They had tasted individual thought and would not give it up. But the largest group was somewhere in between, ethereals who were changing, evolving, becoming something new. They didn't want war, but they also didn't want to betray the humans who had shown them what freedom could mean. Master Veltar found himself at the center of this transformation. As one of the eldest ethereals, he remembered stories from before the collective consciousness, tales of individuals who had shaped their people's destiny through personal choice and courage. Perhaps, he said to the divided council, it is time for us to remember who we were before we became what we are. Admiral Reeves gave the ethereals one final chance to surrender the humans peacefully. When they refused, he unleashed the Federation's power. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, targeting the landing bay where the Defiance sat helpless. But the beams struck crystal shields that rose from the planet's surface like flowers blooming in fast motion. The ethereal's technology was far more advanced than anything the Federation possessed. Sir, they're protecting the terrorists, reported the tactical officer. Then we remove the protection, Reeves said coldly. Full bombardment. Level the entire area. But as the Federation ships prepared to fire again, something unprecedented happened. Individual ethereals across the planet began acting on their own, without waiting for collective approval. Some activated defensive systems that had slept for centuries. Others began modifying their peaceful technology for war. Kireth stood in the Crystal Control Center, her hands dancing over controls she had never learned to use. Somehow the knowledge was there, inherited from ancestors who had once known conflict. Around her, other young ethereals did the same, each one choosing to act rather than wait for permission. Kireth, what are you doing? Master Veltar asked as he rushed into the control room. What I choose to do, she replied, and her smile was fierce with newfound purpose. What we all choose to do. Across the planet, crystal weapons that had been dormant for thousands of years began to power up. Not because the collective consciousness had decided to fight, but because individual ethereals had chosen to defend something they valued more than peace. The Federation had come expecting to face a unified but peaceful civilization. Instead, they found themselves fighting something far more dangerous, free beings who had chosen their own path and were willing to die for it. Admiral Reeves stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. The aliens weren't fighting like a collective organism anymore. They were acting independently, unpredictably, creatively, just like the human rebels he had spent his career hunting. The disease of freedom was spreading, and he was watching a civilization tear itself apart to embrace it. "All ships," he ordered grimly, "prepare for extended combat operations. This is going to be harder than we thought." The battle for Zephyria Prime lasted only 3 hours, but it changed the galaxy forever. Admiral Reeves had expected a simple police action: arrive, demand the criminals, and leave with order restored. Instead, he found himself fighting a war against an enemy that shouldn't exist. The ethereals were supposed to be peaceful collective beings, incapable of individual action or creative resistance. But the beings firing crystal weapons at his ships were no longer the ethereals of old. They fought with the desperate courage of people defending their newly discovered freedom, each one making tactical decisions without waiting for group consensus. In the Crystal Control Center, Kiraeth watched the tactical displays with eyes that burned with purpose. Around her, other young ethereals coordinated the planet's defenses with an efficiency that amazed even themselves. They weren't following the old collective patterns anymore. They were thinking, choosing, acting as individuals united by common cause. "Shield generators at 60%, reported Zalnik, a former poetry student who had never imagined himself commanding weapons. "The Federation is concentrating fire on sectors 7 and 12. Redirect power from the city shields," Kiraeth ordered. "Protect the landing bay at all costs." "That will leave the population centers vulnerable," warned another ethereal. "Then we'd better end this quickly," Kiraeth replied, her fingers dancing across controls that responded to her will alone. It was a strange sensation, making decisions that affected thousands of lives without consulting anyone else first. Part of her missed the gentle certainty of the collective consciousness, but a larger part thrilled at the freedom to act, to choose, to risk everything on her own judgment. On the Defiance, Captain Chen watched in amazement as ethereal weapons carved through the Federation formation like blades of pure light. She had seen many battles in her career, but never anything like this. The aliens were fighting with tactics that seemed to evolve moment by moment, as if each weapon operator was learning and adapting independently. "Captain," called Dr. Webb from his position at the ship's damaged sensors. "The ethereals' fighting style, it's not coordinated like their previous society. They're acting individually, but somehow still working together. Like humans," Chen realized. "They're fighting like humans," she was right. The ethereals had learned more from their brief contact with humanity than either species had realized. They had discovered the power that came from individual initiative guided by chosen loyalty, rather than enforced unity. Admiral Reeves saw it too, and it filled him with something close to panic. His entire career had been built on the principle that collective order was superior to individual chaos. But these aliens were proving that individual choice, when freely made, could be stronger than any imposed unity. "Sir, we're losing ships," reported his tactical officer. "The alien weapons are unlike anything in our databases. They're adapting faster than we can counter them." "Because they're not following predetermined patterns," Reeves said grimly. "Each weapon operator is thinking for themselves, creating new strategies in real time." His communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's the terrorist leader, Captain Chen." Chen's face appeared on the main screen, her eyes hard but not without compassion. Behind her, Reeves could see both humans and ethereals working together on ship repairs. "Admiral," she said simply, "you've lost. Your ships are outgunned and your people know it. But I'm going to offer you something the Federation never offered us. A choice." "I don't negotiate with terrorists," Reeves replied automatically. "Then don't think of me as a terrorist," Chen said. "Think of me as someone who's learned that there are things worth fighting for. You can withdraw now, take your ships home, and report that the criminals escaped. Or you can keep fighting and lose everything, including the lives of your crews. And in return, we leave this system and never bother the Federation again. The ethereals can choose their own path forward without interference from either of us." Reeves felt the weight of command pressing down on him. Around the bridge, his officers waited for orders. These were good people, loyal servants of the Federation who believed they were fighting for peace and order. How many of them would die for his pride? "And if I refuse?" Chen's smile was sad but determined. "Then we keep fighting until one of us can't anymore. But I should warn you, We're not the same people who fled Earth. We've learned what we're willing to die for. Have you? The Admiral's hand hovered over the weapons control. One command would unleash the full fury of the Federation Navy. But as he looked at the tactical display, showing his ships battered by alien weapons operated by beings who had discovered individual courage, he realized something that shook him to his core. The Federation's perfect order had created this situation. By trying to eliminate all choice, all individual thought, they had made freedom so precious that people would risk everything to possess it. All ships, he said quietly, stand down. Prepare for withdrawal. His officers stared at him in shock. Sir? We came here to uphold order, Reeves explained. But some kinds of order can't be imposed from outside. They have to be chosen from within. The Federation fleet turned away from Zephyria Prime, leaving behind a world transformed. In the Crystal Control Center, Kiraeth watched them go with a mixture of relief and wonder. They had won, but the victory felt different from anything described in their old stories. What happens now? Asked Zalnik, his voice uncertain. Now we decide, Kiraeth replied. Each of us, individually and together. We decide what kind of people we want to be. Over the following days, ethereal society began to reshape itself. Some chose to maintain the old collective ways, finding comfort in shared consciousness and unified purpose. Others embraced complete individualism, striking out on their own to explore new possibilities. But most found a middle path, beings who treasured their individual thoughts while choosing to share them with others, who valued personal freedom while accepting communal responsibility. Captain Chen and her people finished their repairs and prepared to leave, as promised. But they weren't leaving empty-handed. Dozens of young ethereals had volunteered to join them, eager to explore the galaxy and spread the message of freedom to other worlds. Kiraeth stood beside Chen on the observation deck as the Defiance prepared for departure. The young ethereal had changed dramatically over the past weeks. Her silver glow now pulsed with individual rhythm rather than collective harmony, and her eyes held a depth that came from making hard choices. Are you sure about this? Chen asked. Space is dangerous. There are no guarantees out there, no safety nets. I know, Kiraeth replied. That's what makes it worth choosing. She looked back at her homeworld where crystal towers now pulsed with the chaotic beauty of individual lights rather than unified glow. Her people were arguing, debating, making mistakes, and learning from them. It was messy and uncertain and absolutely wonderful. Captain, she said, turning back to Chen, I have a question. When I was giving that lecture so long ago, I was about to say that violent species were extinct and peace had won forever. Do you think I was wrong? Chen considered carefully before answering. Violence and peace aren't opposites, Kiraeth. The opposite of peace is slavery. Violence is just one tool among many, and like any tool, it can be used for good or evil. Your people weren't really peaceful before. They were just controlled so completely that they couldn't choose violence even when it might be necessary. And now? Now you're free to choose peace. That makes it real peace, not just the absence of conflict. As the Defiance lifted off from Zephyria Prime, Kiraeth completed the sentence that had been interrupted so many weeks ago. And that's why we must never forget that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from unity of thought, but from the courage to think differently, to choose our own paths, and to face whatever consequences come from the freedom to be ourselves. The ship turned toward the stars, carrying humans and ethereals united not by forced harmony, but by the shared choice to seek freedom among the infinite possibilities of space. Behind them, a world continued its transformation from collective paradise to individual liberty. It was messy. It was dangerous. It was uncertain. It was gloriously, magnificently free. And in the years that followed, as other species encountered these strange partnerships of humans and their alien allies, they too began to ask questions that had never been asked before. What if safety wasn't worth the price of freedom? What if peace imposed from above was less valuable than peace chosen from within? The galaxy would never be the same. And it all started when a single battered human ship limped into an alien sky, carrying refugees who valued liberty more than life itself. One ship, 200 people, one simple request for help. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the universe.